Hi, and welcome to today's expert chat on assistive technology for math. My name's Andrew Lee, and I'm part of the Understood team, and really happy to have with us here today Jamie Martin. He's an assistive technology expert. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, Andrew, what's happening?
Nothing. Really glad to have you here today to explain some of these tips and for assistive technology for us. Before we get started, could you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Andrew. I've been an educator for almost 25 years now. I trained as an English teacher, and I've worked in both mainstream classrooms and special ed classrooms. In particular, most of my teaching career, I've been working with students with dyslexia, and now I'm a independent consultant, so I'm traveling around working with different schools, different teachers, different students, and different parents with my work with Understood. So since we're doing math today, I have a couple of quick math jokes. So here's the first one. You ready?
I'm ready.
Why wasn't the geometry teacher at school?
I don't know why.
Because she sprained her ankle. What happened to the plant in math class?
I don't know. What?
It grew square roots. Okay, one more. Why is a math book always unhappy?
I don't know. Why is a math book unhappy?
Because it has lots of problems.
That would make a lot of sense, actually. I'm not sure that's a joke. Those are great. So before we get started, I just want to let our audience know out there that you can ask questions at any time. So if you want to ask a question about an issue your child is facing or help on assistive technology, please do type it into the chat box. I see a few questions there from Drew, for example, and we're going to get to all those questions. But before we do that, Jamie has a bit of a presentation to show us about assistive technology and math to help us set the stage. So I'm going to let you take it away, okay, Jamie?
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So we thought it would be a little bit helpful at the beginning of this chat to just kind of highlight a few particular math technologies that can help kids who have dyscalculia or specific math issues. So what we're going to do is talk about specific tools in three different platforms. So the first platform we're going to look at is mobile devices. For that, we're talking about Apple or iOS mobile devices along with Android devices. Then we'll talk about a couple of tools that you can use for Chromebooks. And then finally, we'll talk about a couple of tools that are either desktop software or internet-based tools, web-based tools. So we'll go ahead and start with iOS devices or Apple devices. A few years ago, as I was talking to lots of parents and schools about apps for dyslexia, there was always a question about app math or math apps. Sorry, and at that time, even 2 or 3 years ago, there weren't a lot. And it seems like in the last couple of years, there's really been an explosion of math-related apps, particularly for iOS devices. However, this first one is called MyScript Calculator. It is available for both, so both Apple devices and Android devices. And how this can help kids with math issues is with calculators. So the traditional calculator has all kinds of buttons on it with numbers and symbols. And a lot of times kids with math issues have difficulty punching in the equations of using those traditional buttons on a calculator. So what this app will do is allow you to handwrite the equation, either using your finger or a stylus, and then using a technology called handwriting recognition, it will convert that handwritten calculation, a handwritten equation, into typed numbers and symbols. And then it will even go a step further and solve the equation for you. So obviously this is a very complicated equation. It will do 2 plus 2 just fine if you handwrite it, and then it'll do the conversion and then give you the solution as well.
Jamie, before you go on, I just wanted to mention that we did get a question in from Drew about graphomotor writing skills in math. And this sounds like an app that could be really helpful for a kid who may be having a tough time punching in numbers. Is that you say that's true?
I think that's true. And if a lot of times, kids don't just have one particular issue. So, if you have a child with math issues, but they also have motor issues, particularly fine motor issues, and they have difficulty punching in those numbers on a traditional calculator, this could be a tool that could help them get around that.
Great. And Drew, if you're when you're watching, if you want to explain a little bit more about how your child's struggling in terms of handwriting, just let us know in the chat box, and Jamie can address that. So I'll hand it back to Jamie.
Okay, great. So the next app is Y Homework Math Solver. This is also available for iOS and Android devices. This looks like a traditional calculator. You would punch in your equations just like you would in a normal calculator. But then when you click or tap on the solve button, the cool thing that this app will do is give you a step-by-step explanation in addition to giving you the answer. So I think this could be a really helpful tool, particularly when kids don't know how to solve particular types of math problems. Okay, next app I've talked about before. This one's called Mod Math. And unfortunately, this is only available for iOS devices at the moment, but I believe that the developers are working on an Android version at the moment. So keep checking back in terms of that Android version, but for now, just for Apple devices. And basically, this works like a piece of virtual graph paper or electronic graph paper. So kids with motor issues or maybe dysgraphia or dyspraxia who have difficulty lining up numerals on a piece of regular paper can use this little numeric keypad in this app called Mod Math to line up their numbers and be able to solve it in a much neater fashion, much more legible fashion than if they were just trying to do it on regular paper. The other kind of cool feature about Mod Math is that you can take a photograph of math problems from maybe a workbook or a worksheet and import it right into the app. That you can see that little screenshot right there in the middle, and then copy it over using that numeric keypad. Okay, next app is called Math Shake. A lot of times, I've answered questions in the understood community about word problems and kids having a lot of difficulty figuring out how to solve word problems. So Math Shake kind of walks kids through those word problems and helps them translate the sentences and the words into equations first. That's what you can see on this screenshot. There's like a little helper pencil coming up with his little cowboy hat on there. And basically what you would do is drag the numerals, like the 4 and the 2, down into those colored boxes and then put your division sign in there as well. So it kind of really helps the kids figure out a word problem and taking those words and translating into an equation first. But then after that, once you have the equation, it will give you a workspace with all kinds of drawing tools, and you can make shapes and different symbols so that you can work out that problem and show your work that way. So it's kind of a two-step app, really helpful, I think, for those word problems. Kids with math issues also have difficulty mastering their math facts. A lot of times teachers are expecting kids to know their times tables. We had to memorize our times tables when we were kids, Andrew, back in school. So Quick Math is actually a tool that you can use to help kids really get fluency in terms of those math facts. This also works with handwriting recognition. So it will give you a series of either addition problems, subtraction problems, multiplication or division problems, and then with your finger or a stylus, anywhere on the screen you can write in your answer, and it will convert it into electronic text. If you're right, it'll move on to the next one. If not, you get another chance there. But the idea is it's kind of like a game, and you're trying to get through as many problems as you can in as quick a time as you can. And then the last mobile app that I'll just highlight here is called Algebra Touch. And this is kind of like a virtual manipulative, but with the numbers and symbols themselves. So one element of algebra is using the process of elimination to solve problems. So what a child would do here is physically draw a line through the like symbols so that they get eliminated. Then they get that tactile multisensory piece going as they're learning their algebra steps. Another thing you can do with this app is the process of distribution. So if we need to distribute the negative 9c into both the 7 and the 17, it gives you a little kind of sliding bar there on the bottom. And as you slide it to the right, then the negative 9c would be distributed into both of those numerals there. The fantastic thing about Algebra Touch is that once you learn all of the gestures for all of the different steps in an algebra problem, you can type in your own problems, maybe from a homework assignment, and use all of those same gestures to help you solve that problem. So I really like this app too, Algebra Touch. Okay, moving on to Chromebooks. There's many extensions and apps for Chromebooks. I should note, before we get into a couple of specific examples, that very soon Chromebooks are going to be able to run all of those Android apps.
Wow.
So all of those apps that I was just highlighting that can be run on an Android device, probably within the next year, most of your Chromebooks, as long as they're newer, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years or so, you'll be able to run those Android apps on a Chromebook as well. But let's look at a couple of very specific extensions and apps. The first one is an extension called Cloudy Calculator. And Cloudy Calculator kind of combines 3 different tools into one. It's a very basic calculator at its very kind of basic level, where you could type in 2 plus 2 and you can get the answer. But it also implements or makes use of the Google calculator, which you see in this little slideshot. So the basic calculator function couldn't handle a currency conversion. So if I want to know how many Canadian dollars I could get from 23 US dollars, it kind of goes off into Google, and that's what that little G is indicating there, and then it'll give me that conversion. And then finally, if Google Calculator can't handle the particular math problem you're working on, it will link out to another tool called Wolfram Alpha, which is a web-based tool also. So I think I have one more slide. That's just another conversion there. So if I'm going from grams to kilograms in that little worksheet, I can use Cloudy Calculator to do that pretty easily. And then the second Chrome tool is an app. And there's a series of apps from a group called Math Learning Center. And they provide a virtual manipulative, so you can move things around, really get a nice visual to learn math concepts. So this particular one is called Money Pieces, and so kids can learn about, maybe how many. This one is how many quarters would go into a dollar. There's a numeric keypad there, so you can set up equations, with your coins and your dollar bills. But they can move it around on the screen. And if you have a touchscreen Chromebook, they can move it around with their fingers. Again, get more of that multisensory piece going on. And then there's another one from Math Learning Center called Number Rack. I think this one's kind of cool because it's like one of those really old abacuses where you're using beads on a kind of a metal bar to help you visualize a math problem, such as you can see in this particular slide here. Okay, and then finally, there's tools available for desktop computers, but also websites. So any math websites that you come across, you could also use on your Chromebook or your mobile device as well. So the first desktop tool I want to just point out and highlight is called Kidspiration. I've talked about Kidspiration and inspiration in the past in terms of kids with more like dyslexia, writing issues, things like that. But the younger kids version for desktop called Kidspiration has a lot of math tools, a lot of math manipulatives. This particular one is using base 10 blocks to look at comparing quantities. So this was 18 is less than 28, and you see a nice visual going on there. Then there's another template for fractions and figuring out equivalent fractions using blocks of different sizes. So again, they can kind of drag those around. And then I should also mention that for iOS devices, for Apple devices, mobile devices, there's an app called Kidspiration Maps, which also has some of these math tools for mobile devices as well. The last one I want to highlight here before we get to, I actually have a surprise, and then we'll get to your questions. So the last one I want to highlight is a website called WebMath. And WebMath has a collection of kind of templates. This one is a multiplication template. And what you would do to utilize this is type in your numbers, your numerals, right into that template. Click on multiply them on the bottom. But this doesn't just give you the answer. It will give you a series of steps on how to solve that particular problem. So we'll walk you through a multiplication problem where you have to carry numbers, to the next column, which I think is really useful too. I'm not going to show you all the steps, but they would be there. You would just click through them. And then, because I got a nice new Amazon Echo for Christmas, I just want to show you how to use the Amazon Echo for a math tool. So if we come back live, I can show you my Amazon Echo. So this is a personal home assistant. Google Home is also another example. It would help you out. Right before the holidays, I was talking about executive functioning issues and how you can use the Amazon Echo device to help you set timers or calendar events, things like that. But kind of a nice thing is I also discovered you can use it for math. So when I'm balancing my checkbook here in my office, I don't take out my calculator anymore. I just go to my Echo. So hopefully this will work. I've been losing internet access all day. So Echo, what is 2 plus 2?
The sum of 2 and 2 is 4.
Echo, what is the square root of 25?
The square root of 25 is 5.
Echo, what is 25% of $500?
25% of $500 is $125.
Okay, so I think this is a really kind of a cool thing to have in your house. Can be used for lots of simple calculations. I'm not a huge math person, so I haven't tried any like really long, calculus problems, but it can handle those basic computations as well. Okay, that's it, Andrew. So hopefully we have lots of questions now.
That's awesome. Can I ask you a question about the Amazon Echo? Because I think a lot of the parents who are watching might be like, wow, that is really cool. Is that something you just get the Echo? Do you need anything else peripheral? What is it attached to?
No, you don't need anything else. It just kind of plugs into the wall. You have to keep it plugged in because it's on all the time. You notice that it activates with a kind of a code word, an activation word. Most people use Alexa. I changed mine to the other one. I'm not going to say it now because it's going to go off again. But that's basically it. It will connect to the internet, though. So you do need internet access in your home and a wireless router.
Okay, so you need that wireless router and the internet access, but you can just buy it and plug it in, and maybe if your kid is trying to figure out or to answer a simple math question, you could just ask it. It sounds like
right. I mean, you do have to have a mobile phone to set it up. There's an Amazon Alexa app that you will go along with that. I think at this point, though, most people have a mobile phone. I don't think that would be an extra thing you would need to purchase for that. As long as you have wireless access in your phone, you have one of those home assistants, and you can use it for math computations.
Awesome. Let me go back to Drew's question because Drew gave a little bit of more detail. Thank you, Drew, about the types of writing issues the child faces. Basically, it's more difficulty with the actual handwriting than entering the keys.
Okay.
So probably writing out the problems, 2 plus 2. Were there any specific apps that you just presented that might be able to address that? I wonder ModMath maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe ModMath. Definitely ModMath because it's kind of like it's like a virtual piece of graph paper. So, if that particular child was having difficulty even with traditional paper graph paper because of the motor issues there, they can use that little numeric keypad right on the Mod Math app. Another thing, I'm not sure how old that child is, but maybe as the math gets a little more complicated later on, another thing to think about is using dictation for math. In terms of language issues, we think about dictation software all the time, something like Dragon or the built-in dictation on mobile devices. But in recent years, the technology has advanced to the point where you can now use dictation for math, in order to dictate math equations. There's two tools that I can quickly mention for that. One is a Chrome tool. It's actually an add-on for Google Docs. So if your child uses Google Docs and he or she wants to work out math problems in Google Docs, there's an add-on called GMath, and that will allow kids to dictate their equations. And actually, a brand new feature of GMath, like in the last couple weeks or so, TextHelp, which is the company that makes the read and write tools, read and write for Google, read and write for iPad, they've just kind of paired up there with GMath and have now added text-to-speech to those math problems in GMath. So with that GMath add-on for Google Docs, you can dictate math problems and have them read back to you. And then kind of a much more advanced solution in terms of dictation is a desktop program called Math Talk. And that you would need to pair it up with Dragon Naturally Speaking. Kind of uses that speech engine, but it's kind of like an add-on to that, so that the software will recognize those math equations as they're dictated. So maybe down the road, for that particular child, especially if he or she likes math and is getting into more complicated math, a couple of those dictation options might be useful.
So Drew actually responded and said that maybe more than one child, roughly 15 to 17. What I'm hearing you say, Jamie, is that perhaps the GMath would be a good one to try out because it's on Google Docs, so it might be easier to access. What do you think about? Is that right for that age range?
Yeah, I think so. And it's free, so if it winds up not working out well, you're not out a lot of money.
Free is always a good thing.
That's right.
Great. So we have another question about the Math Learning Center. And I'm just wondering about, for that Math Learning Center, is it available through a number of different devices, just iOS, Windows? I think the person who's watching might have missed that.
Okay. I don't think it's available on mobile devices or desktop, or even if it's web-based, although I'm not 100% sure. Okay. I am 100% sure that there's about 10 different apps in that collection, and they are available from the Chrome Web Store, and you can access those. They're all free, and you can access those whether or not you have a Chromebook or just a regular desktop computer. So if you're using the Chrome web browser, you can access the Chrome Web Store, and these are all going to be apps in the Math Learning Center. I highlighted Money Pieces and Number Rack, but there's a bunch of other ones. There's one for fractions. There's more of a traditional number line. There's one for geometry called GeoBoard. So lots of different ways that you can use those in terms of all different kinds of math, and they're free. So it's a Chrome app, and you can use it either with a Chromebook or with a regular desktop with the Chrome browser.
Great. Now, one of the things that has been mentioned is the graphing versus sort of arithmetic. We know arithmetic's 2 plus 2. Graphing is sort of the lines. Any of these programs or apps might be good for graphing, or is that something separate than just straight math?
I think I'm not sure if any of the ones that I was showing have a graphing function. However, I can mention a few others. There's actually a web-based tool called GeoGebra, which is a graphing calculator. And you can that one's available across all platforms. So it's a web-based tool. It's a piece of software that you can download for a desktop or a laptop. But there's also mobile apps available for that also. So it's called GeoGebra. It's a graphing calculator. It can handle things like functions, geometry, algebra, calculus, statistics, all those things you would need to do graphs for. GMath actually you could use for graphing. There's some graphing tools in GMath. That's that Google Docs add-on. Let's see, what else? There's one for, there's actually a mobile app for iOS devices called Sketchpad Explorer, which does kind of graphing, and they call it dynamic geometry. So there's graphing in there. It's kind of a companion to a desktop software called Geometer Sketchpad. So if you have kids on the higher level who are doing that graphing, definitely check out Geometer Sketchpad also, desktop software, or that iOS companion app called Sketchpad Explorer.
Okay, awesome. And then one last question. You've written, I think you have a blog out there about the first assistive technology kids should try, and it's for reading, it's for, text to speech. In the math context, is there sort of a way for people to dip their toes in? Their child may struggle with something in math. What's the sort of first thing they should just try or experiment with? You have a thought about that?
I would say either one of those calculators that I showed today, one of those non-traditional calculators, or something that has those virtual manipulatives available. So either where the kids can really kind of visualize a math concept, because I think that's really the core of math issues is the kids not really grasping the concept. So if they can see something visual and be able to manipulate shapes and blocks and things around with their hands, I think that's going to make math make a whole lot more sense to them. So either one of those kidspiration tools, either for iOS or desktop computers, or Math Learning Center for the Chrome web browser, or there's actually one more called the National Library of Virtual Manipulatives, which is a web-based tool that has lots of free virtual manipulatives as well. So I think does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the non-traditional calculator is a really interesting suggestion. That definitely does answer the question.
Okay.
With that, we're about out of time, so I just want to thank you, Jamie, for joining us. As always, really helpful to have you here and explain some of these concepts.
My pleasure.
And for parents who are watching, just want to let you know that this chat will be archived and viewable as well on u.org/calendar. That's u.org/calendar. You can also go there to see any of our upcoming chats. If you want a little bit more in-depth information on assistive technology for math, just go to our site. We have an article literally called Assistive Technology for Math, and it will help break down some of these topics and let you get a little bit more information if you're interested. With that, thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.